You're welcome along to another edition of Tipp. That's from myself, Shane Brophy, sports editor of the Nina Guardian, joined this week by former Tipperary underage defender and Waterford senior hurler Brian Flannery, native of Killadangan, ex-Nina CBS alumnus. So, Brian, you're welcome back to the show.
Thanks, Shane. Busy weekend. A lot of games on, and good to see a lot of them around the box this weekend as well. So it's a lot to look forward to.
Yeah, absolutely. And I suppose no more than yourself, I suppose, when the Waterford Tipp games come around at every year, I'm sure extra little, I suppose, a bit of spice for yourself. And then just looking at the game this weekend, I think this is the game of the Division 1A that we're going to get. There's going to be no shadow boxing in this one. Like I think Limerick and Cork, they're probably going to meet in the final. I'm not sure how hard they're going to go at each other. Like Waterford, if they lose, they're relegated. Tipp, if they lose, it's 3 defeats on the spin before you go to Waterford in the summer. So that's why I think Waterford and Tipp will be going full bore at this on Sunday.
Look, there's no doubt about it. It's Waterford's final game in the National League. So, whether from a team base and even from an individual player base, you want to give a lasting impression in your manager's mind that, the last thought is how well you played it in the final league game. There's an awful lot riding on it. And I suppose, look, Waterford 12 months ago were coming out of Division 2 or Division 1B or whatever we're calling it as champions. And I suppose they were on a bit of a roll. I mean, you could certainly argue it's better being in the top grade, playing the better teams. The problem for Waterford, I suppose, is just that inconsistency. Very inexperienced team the first day out against Cork, didn't play well, were well beaten. And then the following Sunday played really well, beat Limerick, maybe Limerick in their first game, but certainly gave a very good performance to beat Limerick in Welsh Park. Got over Offaly, got the win against Offaly in their next game. I suppose the one that if things don't go well on Sunday, the one that'll sting really is the game in Nolan Park a couple of weeks ago, where Waterford played really well, 2 points up on the stroke of full time and ended up losing by a point and came away with nothing. Haven't played, quite well for an awful lot of that game. That's certainly a disappointment. But I suppose the concern is last week in Salt Hill, and I was up in Salt Hill. You couldn't describe how poor a performance or how, the lack of energy. It really was, I suppose, a head scratcher, because as far as I know, they went up the night before. They were really keyed up to give a big performance. But halfway through the first half, Galway reeled off 1-7 in a row and the game was done. And they ended up losing by 8 points, but it could have been 18.
Yeah.
Nolan was very good on goals, stopped the penalty, saved another certain goal. So, there's a lot of questions of individual players, I suppose. Well, you have to think that there'd be a major response this week, particularly in Welsh Park, particularly that it's Tipperary All-Ireland champions, particularly that, in a matter of weeks they'll be playing Tipperary in Welsh Park again. So, there's bound to be, if that doesn't get a team focused and up for the game, they really are in trouble. But I'd expect a huge performance, from Waterford. They have no reason. They'll throw the kitchen sink. As I said, it's their last league game. They can't get to the league final at this stage based on where they are. But a win would almost guarantee them, that they'll be playing in top tier again next year. So, sometimes in league games like this, it's the team whose need is greatest that you see the biggest performance. To a degree, Tipp, I suppose, are in a funny position, and I watched them. I was in Thurles for the Galway game first off. Still have that glow of the team that unexpectedly maybe, but are All Ireland champions.
Yeah.
But that is going to, I suppose, that shine will wear off probably too pretty quickly if no team.
I'd say the Limerick game definitely took it. I'd say it's definitely gone now. Like after the Limerick game, but it's like just the manner of what happened that night.
I just wonder when looking at I don't know, we mentioned about Nina CBS and that, like it only seems like yesterday since Darren McCarthy was winning a Harty Cup.
Yeah.
But if you look at the amount of games that Darren McCarthy has played, Oisin O'Donoghue, Sam O'Farrell, you could probably make the same argument Mark Fitzgerald, who's been involved with him as well. They all the players that could do with a rest. To be honest, I know I was up home around Christmas there and we're watching Darren McCarthy playing under 21
Yeah.
in Burnley on a real. I mean, he's on an unbelievable run. But you do wonder, are players like that a little bit jaded or a little bit tired? Probably.
Yeah, and I know it keeps being thrown that a lot of the Limerick players were in the same boat, but a lot of Limerick players on their schools teams didn't play all the games. They were so some games they were a scratch or something, it's as if somebody said you're not playing, like, and I think Clare had that as well, as far as like Oisin O'Donoghue, Darren McCarthy, Sam O'Farrell seem to play every match, like, so I don't know whether Liam Cahill seems to be more, I suppose, amenable to lads playing games at that level, and he's definitely that kind of a manager that will say, look, you're my player, but you're not completely my player, and you have to experience college life as well, and experience that completely.
Yeah, it's a difficult balance. I mean, I think kids from that 18 to 21 are probably, they're involved in everything. Every team in your club, every team in the county, the guys that are at the top end of it, they really have probably too much hurling, no point in saying otherwise. So it'll be interesting to see, this Jason Ford back this weekend. Is this an opportunity to rest one or two players? I think, look, both teams need to win. I think Tipp need to get some of the, maybe Ronan Maher back into the team. They need to get some of the mainstays, and they need to get probably some of the central positions nailed down a little bit better as well. So, it's that the unfortunate thing is every game seems to be important. So, as regards trying to managing players' game time and load and all this, it's easier said than done as well when there is pressure. There's financial pressure. I suppose the income that's generated being in the top tier in comparison to the second is huge. So, both counties are spending an awful lot of money on their senior team. I don't think either of them would fancy the prospect of relegation, where you could have $100,000 drop in your league. I know these might sound like small issues, but
they're huge for a county treasurer, like they're.
Look, every team, there's no team that can, that will look forward to that prospect. So that's why there's so much on it. And Waterford's need is ultimate because it's their last game. They have no other game to run into the championship. And I do think if you look at last year's league, the team that was relegated was Clare and Wexford, and both had miserable championships after. Clare, if you remember, were All Ireland champions. I think Liam Cahill and the lads, you'll probably be thinking, look, we don't want to end up there either. And if Tipp come away from Welsh Park, without anything this Sunday, and you're facing into do or die battle, maybe a relegation eliminator against Kilkenny, the following week, it's not where you want to be either. So that's why really looking forward to it. And it's on a 3:15 Sunday in Welsh Park.
The weather's looking good too. Like, just going back on what we've seen from Waterford so far. I suppose based on the non-performance against Cork and the way they rebounded for Limerick, you're probably expecting, okay, just Waterford had the ability to bounce back straight away. But I'd say that the frustrating thing probably from Peter Quealy's thing from last week is that, like, they did a lot right against Kilkenny and lost the game, and that they didn't take their annoyance out on Galway. Like, there was a kind of a sorriness about their performance against Galway, as if they didn't deal with the disappointment of the Kilkenny game properly. They instead of using it as a tool to get themselves really mentally tuned for Galway, they kind of let it seep in their head. That was just my view from looking at the few highlights I saw.
Yeah, Waterford let that game drift very, I suppose, very quickly or very easily. As I said, was lost in that period in the first half, conceded 1-7. But also just, you kind of wonder what the plan was, because they allowed Galway, build up from the back and the short puck out. They didn't get enough pressure, I suppose, on the Galway defense. And then when the ball went to the opposite end, they were certainly guilty if the first goal, young Rabbit caught a great ball in, and he had the wing back, the wing back number 7, Ronan Glennon, off his shoulder. So, obviously a Waterford attacker didn't track the runner, and the ball ended up in the back of the net. So, you weren't either putting enough pressure on the Galway defence and the ball going into the likes of Rabbit, who was impressive. and then you hadn't I suppose the quality deliveries then cut out. If you had a spare man at the back, it you couldn't really find him. You were wondering where is the Waterford spare defender, because it was more like the work rate, and at times you were looking out there, Jesus, have Galway an extra player? The work rate just wasn't there from Waterford, and that's, I think, Peter Queally looked very disappointed after himself. I'd say he was wondering, he wasn't expecting that type of performance. Waterford had quite a good team back, had a few of the Ballygunners, Aaron O'Neill, Ian Kenny was back in the starting lineup, Paddy Levy had his second game. But again, probably just that, again, to get the structure right. Mark Fitzgerald was playing full back. Again, he's far better halfback than he is.
Yeah, it's kind of there's the Rob and Peter to play Paul with Conor Prunty injured. Like he's so athletic. Like he's an outstanding halfback.
Mark Fitzgerald at wing back. Now, I suppose interestingly, Tadhg de Burke came on in the second half, so whether he be an option this Sunday, he'll certainly, I imagine, will start, whether it is at full back or centre back. I suppose a couple of players that may be back this Sunday, the likes of Desi Hutchinson and Peter Hogan, who picked up, I think, minor enough knocks the week before. So look, with so much on the line, you'd expect that they'll be, if they're anywhere right, they'll be pushed into the fray. But it's just, I suppose, just some of the players. I suppose Callum Lyons is another player that has, very good a couple of years ago. Hasn't found his feet yet since he's back in, getting plenty of game time. But again, was playing maybe half forward, midfield. Come on at half back the last day. Again, another outstanding half back. But I suppose to try gel the players that's there.
Waterford seem to have a lot of players, but knowing what their best 15 is seems to be, you're just not sure, and I know it probably hasn't helped Peter Queally's cause that the Ballygunner Bads had to come back late. So look, we know Ian Kenny's going to play, Desi Hutchinson's going to probably start, Paddy Levy.
Summer,
you're after that, you're not, you like Mike Kevin Mahoney could play Peter Hogan, you're not sure, but you're trying to find that balance. Is Jamie Barron going to be midfield or centre forward? That sort of a thing. I suppose it hasn't helped in that way, being able to use that league to bed in your like at least 13 or 14 your starting 15.
Yeah, it hasn't quite gelled perfectly yet. And even, I suppose, the free taking, Ruben Halloran had made his way into the team this year and had been excellent on the frees, and all of a sudden then you're taking him off the frees, whether that knocks his confidence a little bit, you're handing it back to Stephen Bennett, and it was kind of an issue last Sunday in Galway. Not an easy place, I suppose, to hit frees, but it's, there's just a little lack of certainty there. And look, Jamie Barron, again, he just didn't have the energy on the day. A lot of credit in the bank. He's going to feature somewhere. But the likes of Jack Prendergast, there's a lot of players there that didn't fire on the day, and they really need to I suppose they really need to bring something a little bit different this week. But again, it's not too dissimilar. They do need to get nail down the central positions. Is Tadhg de Burke going to be starting centre back in the championship? If he is, you play him there this Sunday. I think ideally, I think maybe even you give Ian Kenny the number 3 jersey, move Mark Fitzgerald back out to half back. Try really go for this game Sunday. I think you've got to come out. Waterford has got to emerge from Sunday with a fair idea of your championship team, and it's their last league game. There won't be grand. You can play a few challenge matches and everything else, but this will be the last competitive run they have. So you've got to get as close to your championship team. That's why I imagine if Desi Hutchinson's available, I'd certainly be starting putting him straight in. Peter Hogan as well. I don't think you can. You don't have the option of trying to ease lads in. Sunday is a must-win game for Waterford. But even aside from the whole league side of it and the points, just that run into the championship, you want to have a better idea, particularly down your central spine. Young Sean Welsh has done well at full forward.
Yeah, I like him. There's a rawness about him, but I think when he fills out properly and gets fully confident, I think Jesus, there's a real touch of one of the O'Halloweens about him, isn't there? He's so, he's not unorthodox, but he's that lad of that size is so potent.
Yeah, I love his directness. He gets the ball,
Yeah.
he goes to defenders, he goes to goal. But again, I suppose a similar player, Michael Kiley. We mentioned Harty Cup and Fitzgibbon. There's a guy that was a Fitzgibbon hero. Really hasn't made the impact yet
Mm.
at the county level. Again, he's a player, huge ability. Probably better. Again, I would regard him better close to goal than he's played a lot this season out at wing forward. To me, he's far more dangerous inside in close on the square. Would you have kind of the twin towers, maybe Michael Kiley and young Sean Welsh together inside close to goal? Cork do a lot of that at times. Maybe that's something worth looking at. But yeah, look, it's decision time now. As the saying goes, in another few weeks we'll be previewing the start of the championship. It all comes around pretty quickly once Patrick's Day arrives. Everything moves pretty quickly.
Yeah, like I'm curious with this match. Like, we know in terms of league and both teams, I think will be going hard at it. But then one eye to the championship, and I was just thinking this could be the game where maybe if Tadhg de Búrca starts, that it could be fullback. Because I remember last year he had he just with his ability, he's a sitting six, but Andrew Ormond caused all sorts of trouble at centre forward, and the likelihood is that Tipp will probably go that way again in the summer. So would you be better off put somebody else at six that's maybe going to track him, and maybe have a look at De Búrca and John McGrath as a fallback as well at fullback? Because that was where that was where the big difference was in the championship match last summer. That Tipp's half forward line, Jake Morris and Andrew Ormond particularly, caused Waterford all sorts of trouble that day.
Yeah, and I suppose interestingly against Kilkenny, Paddy Levy was more or less the out centre back, in that he was man marking Owen Cody, and that really well. Paddy Levy done that job perfectly. So that's something that you could certainly look at. I mean, Tadhg de Búrca has all the attributes to be a good full back. I certainly this Sunday, I that's the way I'd be going, because I'd be getting Mark Fitzgerald back out into the half back line. It puts Tadhg de Búrca back in the team. You can judge it then depending on whether Tipp have three inside forwards or not. He may still end up as your spare defender, and if he does, all the better. But he'd be well to, I suppose, to track whether it is an Oisin O'Donoghue or a Jason Ford or whatever inside close to goal. That would certainly, I think that would work. And as I said, Paddy Levy is probably going to be in the team at somewhere around the line. But as a man marker, he's proved that a number of times now that he's well able to do that. And whether it is tracking an Andrew Ormond or a Jake Morris, or that, that's something, I suppose, that you'd expect that he'd certainly be capable of as well.
Yeah, I suppose from a Tipp point of view, I suppose 2 wins from 4. I suppose, as I definitely did after post the Limerick game, that they said that the All Ireland, I'd say, hangover or gloss is definitely gone now. And I'd say in some ways, while Liam Cahill was probably didn't mind a bit of a ground, and I'd say the manner of what happened against Limerick, I'd say definitely shocked him. And like I'd be shocked maybe if the last 2 weeks of training hasn't been maybe their best since they got back together in early December. It's like Tipp, even if they win out, it's unlikely 8 points will get them to a league final. So these are their last 2 games coming up, and I said we haven't seen Ronan Maher. He was named on the bench against Limerick, didn't play. He's played a couple of challenge matches, so I'd be expecting him to get game time here. I think Michael Breen was earmarked to come back from injury for this game. Robert Doyle, I think Jason Ford will be back from suspension. I say Darren McCarthy, Usher Dunn, who have gotten a chance maybe to freshen up a bit. Sam O'Farrell, Willie Connor suspended. Like I wouldn't be surprised if Willie Connors is out. I wouldn't be surprised if we're going 13, maybe 14 of last year's All Ireland team at the weekend. Maybe I'd say Cathal O'Reilly's probably gotten more games than they were planning to give him, just with the injury situations being in defence. But just in terms of, I suppose, bedding in what worked last year, and I suppose starting back from that level and maybe taking it from there.
Yeah, look, it is interesting. Look, I mean, I suppose it depends on what way you look at it, half full or half empty. Every county is beaten Offaly, so you can kind of put those 2 points aside. They beat Galway in the first round, which was quite an inexperienced Galway team. So they really haven't done much in
No.
the league. Now, if I suppose looking favourably, Tipperary, they've had a couple of weeks to prepare for this game. They will have had, they've set back, they'll have looked at Waterford last weekend. I'm not sure that they've learned too much from Salt Hill, but so they have had that extra little bit of preparation to get things, I suppose, back motoring. But it's, I think you need to see it now. The Limerick performance was so off the mark, and your best player was, like 35-year-old in the middle of the field, like, so, Noel McGrath isn't probably going to have those type of games every well. So there's a little bit of pressure. As I said, look, it's when you're All Ireland champions, you have that glow, and you can kind of say, well, look, we're building for the championship. But the fear for Tipperary is what happened Clare last year, is when, if you have a really poor league and things doesn't go well in Welsh Park Sunday, you're faced Kilkenny, a dogfight the following week. All of a sudden, there's you don't have that momentum going into the championship, and there's more questions and answers. And the reality is, no matter what anybody says, I suppose, look, the Munster Championship is what is important. But you couldn't be certain. I certainly wouldn't be certain that, of who the three counties will emerge from Munster. And it's an unusual situation that the reigning All Ireland champions are not the favourites for this year's championship. That's not even second favourites. Like, it's an amazing, I suppose, occurrence that, Tipperary probably won that All Ireland last year that wasn't expected.
It's actually something that I don't know if you heard Seamus Flanagan this week on Off the Ball, and I tend to agree with him that I think Liam Cahill's going to store this up. The national media, all the attention seems to be on Cork, even though they lost last year's All Ireland. Okay, Limerick. I still believe that Limerick at their very best, I think, are still the best team in the country, but I think Limerick slightly off it are the same as everyone else. Like, when they're at the best, they can crush anyone, like they did in Tipp in the league. But then you see last weekend, when they're ordinary, they struggle to put Offaly aside, and they lose to Waterford. And like, I think Liam he'll hold it for when he needs it. But there's such a maybe disrespect that we're not being talking about. Even there's more mention maybe of Clare, and that there's one more kick in this.
Cork, really, isn't it? It's all Cork moment, which is amazing. And I I'm not sure I'd like to be where Cork are, to be honest with you, because it's one thing being confident and bordering on cocky, but when you haven't done it, it's a strange place to be pushing lads out front and center and proclaiming that you're going to win this, that, and the other, and everything. So Tip are in a good position that way. I think it's just the if you were to look at Tip 12 months ago, you probably would have said, look, it'll take maybe a couple of years to bed in some of the younger players coming out of successful underage All Ireland winning teams. That'll take a little bit longer. The fact that it happened last year, and you mentioned young Cathal O'Reilly, like there's some fabulous young players, that's going to be available in the next year or two that are within touching distance, I suppose, of making an impact. And
like, if Tip were to make a decent attempt at retaining this All Ireland, like, it can't be left to the same 17 to 20 guys that won it last year. It needs to have a Joe Caesar or a Sean Kennelly, some of those fringe guys, Cathal O'Reilly, really putting. Because, like, they're probably, the likelihood is second year with Darren McCarthy and Sam O'Farrell, the likely is to be a drop off, because you have to think they're still very young, like they're still maturing mentally. Like, you don't know how they're still processing all they what achieved last year, Oisin O'Donoghue as well. So like that like, and that's where maybe the likes of Valentine and his injury has been so. I think it's been impactful in the league. Like I was saying, but we're still not sure in the middle of the field. We have Willie Connors and Conor Stakelin, but it's much of a muchness, and like you need. You don't know who's going to be slightly off form, but you need other guys to step in and do the job as well. And we kind of haven't. Maybe Josh Keller has had his moments. Kind of haven't really had guys.
Yeah,
provide the impact to maybe the Darren McCarthy's did last year.
Yeah, and that's, I suppose, the concern is if you take someone, say, like Andrew Ormond, who had an unbelievable year last year.
Yeah.
If he's a little bit off, if Jake Morris is a little bit off,
Yeah.
You're still dependent on those players to really carry the load in attack. I suppose. Look, it's good to see Jason Ford back this weekend. He's a reliable score getter. But you do probably still need one or two more. I said Josh Keller had a brilliant county final for Nina. You need someone else or one or two more players to come into the mix that will be like Joe Caesar was very good again. Speaking of Fitzgibbon Cup, like was really, really good. And he's a player that can play probably in a couple of different positions.
I'd be curious to see whether he gets the midfield role this week with Willie Connors out. To make like if Ronan comes back in, I would think Ronan probably goes at 6. I definitely think come championship Tipp will revert to the man marking job. I don't think they'll put Ronan. I don't think they'll sell out Ronan this week. I'd say the focus on Ronan this week will be just game time. Even if you struggle, you struggle. Just game time. It won't matter about matchups this weekend.
Yeah, and look, Ronan has that, obviously the experience, but he's very good in the air as well.
Yeah.
And, he matches up very good with, as I said, whether it is
Mike Kiley probably this weekend or Walsh.
Last year or Sean Welsh, he matches very good against, again, whether it is Brian Hayes, Alan Conley, he has that aerial ability that few players has. And you need somebody like him in the team, but you probably do want to be getting, I expect Tipp will be closer to their All-Ireland winning team this Sunday than they have been so far. Reece Shelley will probably come back in between the sticks as well. You'll probably see a little bit more familiar look to it, but every team wants was to get that spine in place, and then you can experiment a little bit around it perhaps, but you need that core down the middle, particularly with only a couple of competitive games. I don't think it's unlikely. It's obviously Waterford certainly won't on their current points can't make the final. Tipp maybe have an outside chance, but it's probably unlikely. So there's only one or two games for either county between this and the championship competitive wise. So you really want to be getting an awful lot out of it, and you want to be, I suppose, both managers will want to come away from Welsh Park in a good frame of mind of where they stand and where certain players are as well. So that's why it's it really is a huge game. And league, for you can really put that aside. It's the points is one thing, but the impact that it has on confidence, the run into the championship is probably going to be more important. And the fact that look, Tipp come back to Welsh Park in the this year, and you need you're going to have to pick up points somewhere along the line. Waterford have a really tough game first up in Ennis, so
I think that's something Peter Queally was this week was tapping into. Okay, lads, if we lose to Clare in the first round of Munster, we have Tipp the following weekend. Like, how do you process if we don't get a result? You only have a week to get ready. Like, I'd say this will be a big week for Peter Queally in terms of planning for that scenario. If they don't get the win in Clare, that they're mentally right 7 days later for the Tipperary match in the summer.
Yeah, look, you got to be able to shake it off, and I suppose that's a big question. Can they shake off that poor performance? Now, they were really poor in the first game against Cork, and were very good the following Sunday. They probably have proven that they can do that. Now, that again was down to you had a lot of personnel changes. That was a young experimental team that played Cork in the first round. Added in a few more regulars the following week, but it's full metal jacket this Sunday. There's no holding. There's no there's you're not trying to manage anything apart from a performance and a win this Sunday. So both teams will be very strong. And again, you talk about Tipp maybe having 12 or 13 of their All-Ireland starting team. I'd be surprised if Waterford don't have 12, 13 players that'll what they expect will start in the first round of the championship. There's no reason not to, apart from injury. I know Conor Prunty is going to be out for a little while. Patrick Fitzgerald has been injured since the run with Ballygunner, but outside of that, I'd expect it to be a full panel to pick from.
Yeah, just your general overview of what you've seen in the league so far from, I suppose, all the leading counties, like, and as we touched on it a few minutes ago, that it's Limerick and Cork seem to be 90% of the 90% of the column inches, and everybody else gets the rest of the scraps. Like, so, but like we've seen last year, everybody thought after the Munster final that Limerick and Cork would get a trilogy in an All Ireland final. It didn't happen. Like, we're kind of in a weird place that teams are very, very good at shaking off poor performance. There's very little consistency at the moment. I just think you lost the link there, Brian. Hello, Brian. I think you might have to log back in there. I think Brian we'll just get Brian back on there. I think we're logging back in. I'll just take Brian out and see will he come back to the stage. 1 second. Yeah, so Tipperary play Waterford on Sunday 3:15 at Azuri Walsh Park. The other games in Division 1A are on Saturday 5:15. It's Galway and Kilkenny, and at 7 o'clock it's Limerick against Cork. Both games are on television, and I'll just stay talking until we get Brian back on, and just drop in the link there. Just to touch on some other games this weekend in Senior Camogie, the Tipperary senior team are. Here's Brian back again. Yeah, sorry, but I don't know what happened there, Brian.
No panic.
Yeah, I suppose we're just talking about the league in general, and I suppose where teams are for the championship. I suppose we kind of anticipate a lot of counties are where they are. Galway look like they're building something. Definitely second year under Micheál Donoghue, they look better. Kilkenny, we always know they're hard to beat, but I think they're probably short on a bit of X factor at the moment. Clare are in the longest of the long grass. Like, I think they're potentially very, very dangerous this year. There's a vibe of a last thing of a dying wasp, but there's a lot of really, really good players there if they gel on the day. And you'd think with Waterford, like, a lot of pressure on probably Peter Queally this year. Like, and the way the fixtures are stacked up, Waterford's most winnable 2 games are the first 2. So, like, they really have to be going after a fast start as well. And of course, Tipp is All Ireland champion. So, like, there's every county's coming in with their own little bit of, I suppose, want in terms of how they get themselves right.
Yeah, look, and I suppose, look, last year, look, at no stage during the year did people predict that Tipperary would be All Ireland champions. So, not even half time above in Croke Park, you wouldn't have been predicting it. So, look, I think every team, like you mentioned, is kind of flawed in some degree. I still think that of all the teams, Limerick still probably have those 3 or 4 younger players who now have a bit of experience, but maybe haven't been trusted with the kingdom up to now. But if you look at your Cathal O'Neill's, Colin Coughlin, Adam English is Aidan O'Connor. Like, they're really good young players, but who have championship experience, who have a good bit of game time under their belt at championship level, and look kind of set to make the next step. Where I think all those players are probably potential all-stars. If Limerick get on a run. But
I don't know what you think, but I think that Darragh O'Donovan injury is very significant. I think Aaron Gillane plays well when Darragh O'Donovan is in the team. Aaron Gillane is not the same player. I think when Darragh O'Donovan, there's nearly a symbiotic relationship, and the same with Shane O'Brien. I just think O'Donovan knows his role. He gets in the ball. I think Limerick are a better team when he's in the team than not. And now you're having to find a completely new midfield partnership, because it looks like Will O'Donoghue's going to be their 6. Like, would you look at Keane Lynch in there? Like, I think that engine room for Limerick is massive without him. Like, with this AC joint, he could if he's a quick healer, he'll be back for the first round of the championship. If he's not, it could be a while.
Yeah, look at I suppose every team has players that they can't do without, and he's certainly one that you'd like to have on board. But Limerick are probably the team that have those few options. They can put Ian Lynch back in and play your Aidan O'Connor centre forward, and maybe that's what they should do. They have Cathal O'Neill that they needs to nail a place. I just think they were the most impressive team I watched in Welsh Park last year in the Munster Championship. Just they're passing, they're zipping the ball around. I was really shocked when they fell later. Look, they lost the Munster final on penalties. No big deal, but it was a shock when they lost to Dublin. But I do think they're building again. They have that mix where they don't necessarily have to maybe start with Tom Morrissey. They can play maybe one of Tom Morrissey and Gerard Hegarty and bring the other on the bench to add that experience and impact. They just seem to have, as I said, their next level of young players now have experience as well, that they have or two. Shane O'Brien has a season or two. I probably, would have been shouting at the telly at times there last year that they should have been playing some of these players, giving them more game time, maybe start and giving them more of a leadership role. But I think maybe that defeat to Dublin has kind of said, look, they do need to, they move Declan Hannon, that they do need to evolve the team, but they have the players to do so. So, Limerick are probably the team that, if you were to ask me, Cork, obviously, they have a galaxy of players, and they seem to be adding new players into the all the time, young William Buckley, etc. But a lot of those players are very similar. They're very similar to the players they're replacing. And if you're kind of wondering, well, look, are they better than the player? And sometimes it's much in a muchness.
And I guess for Cork can win every match for the rest of the year, but until the All Ireland final. But that it won't matter a jot unless they win the All Ireland final. I suppose that's the pressure that's on Cork this year.
That's the difficult spot they're in that I would like to be in. That nothing, a bit like Leinster rugby, nothing but Ireland will be a successful season. That puts them under huge pressure. And somewhere along the line, when they line up, whether it is behind the Artane boys band up in Dublin, that's big pressure then, where you've said you're going to do this, you then have to go and do it. And psychologically in every other way, they certainly have the players, but not more so than any other county. I would not be buying into that they're unbackable favourites for the All Ireland. Don't see it like that at all. They're certainly in the mix, but I think they have a lot of hurdles to get over before I'd be happy to say, I fancy him to win the All Ireland. To me at the moment, look, it's obviously way too early, but I think Limerick have the blend of the experience youth coming through. And like you said, nobody's talking about Tipperary, even though they're All Ireland champions, which is amazing.
And I don't think any county can look beyond getting out of Munster, and I think that maybe could hurt Cork. Is like, you think if you say Tip edge that one, Cork the following Sunday have to play Limerick, a fresh Limerick team off the bye, and potentially Cork could be 0 from 2 and they're under pressure. That's the beauty of this Munster Championship. It's just where your bye round comes in, who you're playing on a certain weekend. It's just brilliant, and it's why the crowds come to all they're nearly full. There's probably going to be full house signs up, I'd say 9 out of 10 round robin games. Maybe Limerick and Waterford might struggle to sell out. I'd say the rest of them will all sell out.
Yeah, and recently there I was reading the Munster Council financial reports, and that I think almost 90% of gate receipts the Munster Council came from the Munster Hurling Championship. It's an amazing success story, and that's why nobody will be touching the Munster Championship anytime soon. And it is but what makes it is that, on any Saturday or Sunday, any team can win. That's why the crowds are there. You don't get that competitive edge in the Leinster Championship. You just don't. And in fairness, the one thing I give Cork great credit is, they're bringing huge crowds everywhere.
They remind me of the Dubs when the Dubs were on that roll before 2011, where they were trying to end a big sequence. And it's like the thrill of the chase. It's like Mayo, like until they win it. Like and Munster rugby back in the day when there were a lot of disappointments before they finally got to win the European Cup. Like it's that thrill of the chase is great, isn't it?
Oh yeah, I mean there was 16,000 I think in Nolan Park.
Way more about 10,000 Cork, I'd say.
Oh, like I was at the Waterford Kilkenny game in Nolan Park. There was about 6,000.
Yeah.
You know, so there's some like there was only 4,000 in Salt Hill last week. You know, there's Kilkenny, Galway. There's some counties who aren't, you know, whose supporters aren't coming out. You know, so it is great. It does, but it adds huge to the atmosphere.
Yeah.
Like you have that type of crowd. I'm sure Limerick and Cork now will be.
I think there's over 30,000 tickets sold for Saturday night. I think
amazing. You know, like it's brilliant. So they do bring that colour. They bring that enthusiasm. And, you know, they are desperate, I suppose, to win in All-Ireland. And look, any team that goes and wins in All-Ireland deserves it. But I'm not convinced yet. I think Cork will have to, they have a lot of, you know, they have a lot of hurling to do before they get up the steps in Croke Park. So, look, I think that's, we'll have to wait and see. But, you know, Munster is where it is at. There's no doubt about it. And that's why, look, even this on the Waterford tip, it's a little taster to what's to come. But I expect it'll be, if there's a good few coming from North Tip and around. There's a lot of people who will come down and watch this game in Welsh Park. So I expect it'll be tasty. It'll be spiky. There'll be a bit of fire. You know, I expect all of that, but there'll be plenty of good hurling in between as well.
Absolutely. And before we just wrap up chatting about the big game on Saturday, the All-Ireland post-primary schools, senior A semi-final in hurling, the Croke Cup, Nina CBS up against St. Kieran's College. That's at 12 o'clock in Rathdowney. I'm really looking forward to this one. It's been kind of waiting like 5 weeks since Nina won the Harty, and that's the one thing that's eating at me. Like, they were so primed after that January run with wins over Middleton, Thurles, and now you're sitting waiting. And St. Kieran's College have played twice in the meantime. They're match sharp. You just hope that weight isn't going to blunt them. I don't think it will, but like it's like the prize is so tantalizing. I remember being in Tulla 2 years ago, and just the disappointment when they were beaten in injury time by Loughrea. And I suppose that carrot of Croke Park and Patrick's Day, it's a real carrot now for all the schools teams once you win your provincial championship, isn't it?
Oh yeah, and look, I was only talking about it during the week to somebody that if Nina CBS, if they get to the final, we'll be going to Croke Park on Patrick's Day. I mean, that's, you know, you're within touching distance, but I mean, can you imagine Nina CBS lining out in Croke Park? I mean, it'd be such an occasion. You'd like to think that, you know, particularly when they didn't make it the last time they won the Harty, they've only 2 Harty Cups. It's you're so close, but you know, again, it's the aristocrats. You're playing St. Kieran's and Kilkenny. You know, I know a young Gerard O'Shea from St. Mollerans in Carrick-on-Shore is on the team. Like it's the way, I suppose, Harty Cup and college hurling has gone. It's more players nearly that's involved in county minors.
I think the first time I ever remember there was a Kieran's College player playing for Kilkenny seniors last Sunday, young Barco, I'd never remember a lad still playing schools playing senior, like, and it just shows you how high, I suppose you lads cutting across that level now.
Oh, it is, yeah. And like I said, Gerard O'Shea won in All-Ireland with Waterford Minors last year. Kieran's, he wasn't involved with Kieran's team last year. So look at it, it's the standard is you know, it is fantastic. And you know, young Dohan obviously is the kid that's grabbing a lot of the headlines or whatever. Good to see, you know, if Billy O'Brien, like they have a real good spine down the team, a lot of talented players. You know, and I suppose just to wish them the best of luck. And Donncha O'Donnell, you know, it would be a brilliant achievement. I suppose, look, we're all, you know, I suppose preparing if they could get to the final in Croke Park, that would be just you know, I think to be fitting for the run they've had in the last few years at Ryan and Harty Cup, that to get a shot at it. But they will earn it. Kieran's, you never beat Kieran's, I suppose, and they have that more recent match practice under their belt. And that is the concern, you know, 5 week long break. and I know they've been doing bits and pieces in between, but that is a concern. But they've just managed, the big games, Thurles CBS, Flannan's, in the big games when it came down to it, they just have that composure, which is a sign of a team. So again, just to wish them the best of luck, and it would be brilliant if we're all up in Croke Park on Patrick's Day.
Yeah, and I suppose it's the one thing we probably don't have the people sort of, we don't have that intervarsity thing that people have, particularly in America, where you're strong with your where you went to third level. It seems to be there. It seems to be more a second level thing in Ireland, particularly in Tipperary, and like you're next to a CBS man. Like I'm sure you've taken great pride in what they've done the last couple of years, and I suppose seeing particularly maybe the Killadangan lads like the likes of Darrow Dwyer and Rian McGrath, those lads playing a key role, young Jeremy Fogarty cornerback as well. So it's names for the future, hopefully.
Yeah, and it's that family connection as well. Like you're looking down through the team sheet and you say, God, I played against his father, or I played with John Duhan or whatever. Like it's the great connection from generation to generation is there with Nina CBS, and even going to some of the games, whether it's in Cappamore or up in Ennis, and you're running into players that you played with. Whether it was Rice Cup or Harty Cup or all through the years, it's it's brilliant from that point of view, and it certainly has built very much in recent years around Nina CBS, and it's like everything, success breeds success, and once you have that reputation for a competitive Harty Cup team, you do attract in maybe one or two players as well, and it kind of keeps it rolling then for the following year and the year after. But it's something, there's a lovely atmosphere at these games as well.
Yeah, there's great pride, I think, in terms of this. I suppose this year we have the 10 clubs and feeding into Nina. I suppose we've got to mention St. Joseph's in Borrisley there in an All Ireland C semi-final on Saturday as well. It's a big day for them too. Like so, like it's like the inter-county is great, and like the minor under 20 will be starting pretty soon. But like it's like for these are, I suppose, especially for the lads that are in their final year of school, like for them to maybe to follow on from what the 2012 team did, like, and like in 2012 they won the All Ireland without winning the Harty. Last 2 years ago they won the Harty but didn't win the All Ireland. This team is going for immortality. They're going for the full set, which would be, and like as you say, like they've had a tough run. Like they're in a group with Flannan's and Ard Sculreich, then beat Middleton, Thurles and Flannan's. Now they've Kieran's, potentially maybe a third go at Flannan's or Athenryan a final if they get there. Like they're definitely battle hardened. They don't fear the big challenge.
Again, I suppose they have a lot of, they have a couple of players that from 2 years ago, they have the experience of winning big games. A lot of them have played at county minor, etc. So, they have a lot of experience for very young players. But to do it with your school, it is special, and to but schools hurling in Tipperary is very strong, and even Clonmel have made huge. High school in Clonmel have made huge strides.
Yeah, they won the county under 17A schools this week, which is huge for them. Like it's usually the Thurles CBS Invitational, so the Thurles team get to the final is I suppose a great sign for Nina and Clonmel that they were so strong at that level.
I think there's a couple of kids from over the border there in 4 Mile Water and that as well helping out. But it's a great sign, of the strength of underage hurling in Tipperary. The amount of schools that are playing A hurling, B hurling, and look, Borrisley, if you're competing at the the back end of championships for All Ireland titles, you're doing something. You're doing something very well. And across the board, Tipperary schools have been, particularly in recent years, it's not a coincidence then that you have, say, Tipperary successful at minor and under 20 level when you have such a spread of schools that are competing at the top end. They mightn't be all playing Harty Cup, but you've a lot of schools playing, as I said, top quality hurling at B and C levels as well.
I think if I give the credit to the clubs, I think the strength of the schools in Tip, I think you could be traced back nearly to the link with Satanta College with the Tipperary County War. I think it looks like we've got our academy like you have to think the vast majority of players who are playing at high-end school level, whether it's A, B, or C, are in some sort of an academy, and they're doing everything right from their S&C to their skills to nutrition, and that's that's been the baseline that's sort of led to that development.
Yeah, and I think again, from the outside looking in, you seem to have very good cooperation between say those who are over, whether it is development squads or county minor managers, under 20 with Brendan. Like you do seem to, there's a lot of cooperation, and that kids are minded. You know what I mean? Everything is done in their best interest to get them playing at the very top level. But there's no doubt about it. The more players, the more teams you have playing week in, week out at top end hurling, that's only good. That's where you want to be. And I suppose look for Tipp are certainly the envy from a lot of places in relation to their underage success. And you can, when you look at Cathal O'Reilly and his performances at senior level, there's probably half a dozen more players we could talk about who are within touch and distance of making that sort of a breakthrough. But they're breaking through with huge amount of experience, huge amount of confidence, having been in good teams and playing well on good teams and good competitions. It augurs well certainly for the future. But for Nina CBS, this is a huge opportunity as well. You don't beat Kieran's easily, and like you said, they have Kilkenny seniors, Kilkenny under 20 players more so than the Waterford under 20 players. They're pulling from quite a big parish in St. Kieran's. So why?
And with this, the one notable thing, like Kilkenny, St. Kieran's will always have good hurling teams. Absolutely huge. They're the biggest schools team I've seen now in a while. Just a lot of lads in key positions, but they were able to hurl and they were able to move. So they're definitely feeding them well in Kilkenny anyway at the moment. So
yeah, and you'll find that the majority of them are up to the age or close to the mark as well. You don't tend to get too many minors or 17-year-olds on the at the business end of the championship. So, but look, it's great. These are the great games. These are, I suppose, for the kids themselves. These are memories. There's guys, I'm sure, wearing Nina CBS jerseys that this could be the highlight of their hurling career, and that's important as well. As the saying goes, for them to enjoy it. They're on a brilliant run, and it would just get the next step to get to Croke Park, and then you see where it falls. Semi-finals are for winning, as they say. It would be an awful place to bow out, but please God, they'll get it done.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm really looking forward to that one tomorrow at 12 o'clock in Rathdowney. Brian Flannery, thanks for helping to preview that game, and Waterford and Tipperary. We'll have you back soon on Tipcast. Thanks for that.
Cheers.
Brian Flannery there, giving us his in-depth thoughts on the Waterford scene. Great to have his insight in terms of Waterford, ex-Waterford senior hurler, Munster champion. Very unlucky not to win an All-Ireland back in the day. A great, fantastic Waterford team. Like, they were so swashbuckling. So unlucky not to have won the big one. So that's a huge weekend for schools hurling. As I say, the A semi-final, 12 o'clock in Rathdowney, Nina CBS, St. Kieran's College. 1 o'clock in Banagher is the C semi-final, St. Joseph's College Bursley against Clonfert College of Ballinasloe. I was just going to touch on Camogie earlier on. Tipperary play Galway in round 3 of the National League. That's at 3 o'clock on Saturday at the Rag. So anybody maybe wants to take in a bit of Camogie after the match in Rathdowney, you can make your way there. Then on Sunday, Munster under 23 Camogie semi-final. It is Tipp against Waterford as well. Now, that game was initially supposed to be in the college in Waterford City, SETU, but it's been moved to Clashmore Kinsale Beg at 2 o'clock. I think it was only a kilometre from the college to Walsh Park, so you could have maybe got both games or a good chunk of both games, but now Clashmore Kinsale Beg, you couldn't get more closer to Waterford or the Cork border if you tried. So that game was at 2 o'clock on Sunday. This Saturday also sees the final of the first ever Munster Intermediate Hurling Challenge Trophy between Knockaville, Donegal, Kickham's and Ren of Waterford. That's in Newport at 2:00. The first year of that Munster Intermediate competition. We with Newport hosting that inaugural competition, and Knockaville, Donegal, Kickham's in the final. So that's about it for this week's show. To thank Brian Flannery for helping us look ahead to that game. We'll be back next week reflecting on Waterford and Tipp. Hopefully a successful weekend for schools, and we're building up to a big weekend of football. Tipperary back in the National Football League Division 4. Big promotion game away to Wicklow off the back of a very, very encouraging win and performance against Leitrim last weekend. And then the Tip Under 20 footballers, they are starting in Munster Championship action. Yes, we're in Munster Championship time. 14th of March, they start away to, and we're looking ahead to that game as well. So that's all to come on next week's cast. Bye for now.